Shalom Chaverim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. And before we get into our main broadcast, Iran building permanent military base in Syria, which is a claim according to BBC News. I want to share something with you. Got a lot of comments yesterday, and of course what we're going to get into about Iran, Syria, Israel, Saudi Arabia here in just a moment here. Very, very deep, very powerful information I need to share with you. I think will be a blessing to many of you, and also a warning as well, and a reminder to both Syria and Israel of a covenant that was agreed upon hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Let's go back though real quick. I'd gotten a lot of comments in our message the other day because I mentioned glyphosate inside Roundup's pesticides, and of course many people were telling me that's an herbicide. Well, my wife is biologist, medical nurse, midwife, many other trainings in medicine, etc. And she's normally the one that handles that subject to start with. But after she's seen all the comments, she wanted to make sure that we kind of set the table straight about this. Here's Virginia Tech. They're saying are herbicides, weed killers, brackets there, considered pesticides? Weed killers are the same as herbicides. Does that mean that they are pesticides? According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA's definition of a pesticide, yes, a herbicide or weed killer is a pesticide. The reason we use EPA's definition is that they are the federal agency and regulates and registers all pesticide products in the United States. All U.S. applications apply pesticides under regulation of the EPA and their state, territorial, or tribal pesticide regulatory authorities. And that includes, of course, herbicides, fungicides, or anything else. They all come under the same category as a pesticide. So in general, yes, you can still call an herbicide a pesticide because that's the way the EPA actually recognizes that. So just want to kind of make that clear there. I may not be the brightest pumpkin that fell off the pumpkin wagon there, but nonetheless, that made me feel a little bit better. So thought maybe I got that one wrong. Anyway, Iran building a permanent military base in Syria. That is a claim there that's going on. This place here is about 8 miles south of Damascus. And yes, there has been a lot of activity going on there, according to satellite photographs. BBC bringing this out. And the U.S. intelligence has been saying that this is actually a military base being built by Iran. They've added these extra buildings here. Those buildings ended up being completed, sidewalks put in, believed to be this upper area here for vehicles, this being the command post they believe this is. All of this they're saying is an Iranian base. Now, I'm not here to argue that it's Iranian or not. It may very well be, and of course I could understand why Israel would be somewhat concerned. After all, Iran historically came in against Israel and took them into captivity, the house of Judah. But then again, what was that for? It was because of the sins of Israel, as Jeremiah the prophet pointed out. So we forget sometimes why Iran did what they did years ago. Now, I'm not saying that that is the case now, but what I am very concerned about is the situation in Israel today dealing with Syria. Listen to this, what Prime Minister Netanyahu has to say about this.
But Iran openly says we're out to destroy what they call us the small Satan, en route to the big Satan, great Satan, the United States, and in the middle is
middle-sized Satan.
Middle-sized, no offense, you're a middle-sized.
No offense taken.
But this is what Iran wants to do, and it is seeking to colonize Syria for that purpose. That is to Lebanon.
All right, that's really the place I wanted to get to, is where Prime Minister Netanyahu is talking about saying that Iran is wanting to colonize Syria. And he says that everywhere that the ISIS moves out, Iranians move in. And, well, that would be kind of obvious because the Syrian government has used the Iranians and Hezbollah to help battle against ISIS to begin with. Now, my argument has been that the Israeli government from the very beginning should have gotten involved in this conflict that Syria was facing, and should have helped the Syrian government from the start and to defeat ISIS, and we wouldn't have this problem with Iran on the border in the first place. But that has not happened, and that is what's very troubling to me, is that this never did take place, and some might argue that that's insane to even suggest that. Have we forgotten that our mothers, the mothers of Israel, are actually Syrian at the very beginning? Have we forgotten about this? Do we forget that Leah and Rachel are from Syria? They're the mothers of Israel. Have we forgotten the covenant that was made between Laban and that of Jacob, our father, Israel, who is the father of the 12 tribes? Not just 3, but 12 tribes. All right? Now, I know that Laban didn't do right to Jacob to begin with. He changes his wages, etc. But then again, Jacob did not do right by Laban either, in trying to deceive him and getting more of the cattle. We know all these things are the case, but God has blessed Jacob. He's blessed Israel. I am, of course, part of Israel through both my parents, and I love my people. I love my country, but do I think that we have a right to go and topple Syria, or to allow Syria to become so brought down by ISIS because we forget that our mothers are from there? Or we forget the covenant that we made? And has the covenant been broken? Of course it's been broken. The house of Israel went into captivity because of Syria under Hadad. But there again, why? Because of our sins, the God of Israel allowed this to take place. The same thing with the house of Judah and Nebuchadnezzar coming down and taking the children of Israel into captivity because of our sins. Now we're living in a modern day, and yes, God has promised to bring us back home, and God was doing that when it was the Ottoman Empire and we were buying land in this country. But then later, that all changed. 1948 comes around, and instead, the Pope of Rome, Pope Pius XII, has a great influence on what happens in Israeli politics. So much that Ben Gurion and Rabin are willing to kill Jews that are coming to try to liberate Jerusalem in a war of independence. Because why? The Pope of Rome did not want Jerusalem touched. He wanted a big buffer zone for the Palestinians to live there to protect Jerusalem for the Vatican itself. With that in mind, let's take a look at the covenant that was made between Laban and that of Jacob or Israel. Let's look at what it says here. Verse 47. This is in, by the way, Genesis chapter 31. And Laban called it Gigar Sahab Dutha, but Jacob called it Galid, okay, which is a mount of testimony. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and you this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galid. And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watched between me and you when we are absent from one another. So Laban is a Syrian. Jacob is an Israeli, as we would say today. And he says that it's to watch between the two of them, that they would not cross one or the other. See, if thou shalt afflict my daughters, and if thou shalt take wives besides my daughters, no man being with us, see, God is witness betwixt me and you. Now the problem is Israel has broken the covenant when it comes to being married to Leah and Rachel, and he has taken wives that are not Syrian to begin with. They're not Leah and Rachel. And people have no idea how significant this prophecy is right here. Let's move on down a little further. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set up betwixt me and you. This heap be a witness, and the pillar witness that I will not pass over this heap to you, and that you shall not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. So if we're going to pass over that border, which, by the way, it was just east of the Jordan River, if we're going to pass over it, we should go over that river to do good for Syria. And I realize in 1973 we had the Syrian war. That was not Bashar al-Assad. That was his father that came against Israel. Bashar al-Assad, president of Syria now, has never come across the border to attack Israel. But instead, in 2010, was trying to make peace with Israel. He was trying to honor the covenant of Laban. And he has been what? He has been a protector of the house of Israel that has lived there, the Ephraimites that believe that Yeshua is Messiah, or the Christian community of his nation. He's been a protector for them, a fortress for them. But Isaiah 17 says that when Damascus falls, so will the fortress of the house of Ephraim. Why? Because they destroy the Christians. They take away the very man that would be willing to protect them. And I am so troubled in my heart that Israel as a nation and the political leaders, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Knesset members, have failed to remember our covenant with Syria. And instead, you've taken other wives. Let me show you the wives you've taken. You don't believe that Israel didn't take other wives? Well, here was one wife Israel took, the Pope of Rome. Isn't that nice? You took the Pope of Rome instead of Israel. You don't believe it? After this meeting here, what do? They had the Mekodeshet, the big, what does Mekodeshet mean? It's a Hebrew word. It means to espouse or to be engaged. And so the Pope of Rome is allowed to hold a communion service on Mount Zion in the upper room there. And Israel allowed it and used special forces to oust the Israelis that were there, the Orthodox community, so the Pope of Rome could hold his communion service, fulfilling Obadiah and the prophecy there, that they would drink upon my holy mountain, and they shall continue to drink down the